my script. Yeah, so today we're going to talk about how you create tension and release with your chord progressions. For those of you that already have like a pretty solid basis in music theory, this might be pretty basic, but like I find that it, taking a pass through the music theory basics can be a nice refresher and sort of like a good way to recenter if you've been spending a lot of time in more complicated or intricate harmonic forms. Also full screen presentation. How does that look? All right.
Oh, we can't see anything.
Oh shit! Am I not showing my screen?
I think you have to like start the presentation first and then stream the presentation.
Oh no! This is horrible. Okay. So I have to. Well, I can't full screen the presentation and then share my screen. Let's see.
If you have to, you could just.
You could share your whole screen.
Yeah.
I might just do that. Screen 1. Go live. All right. Now I've got the Discord inception going on. Can you see it now?
Yeah. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, sweet. Nice.
Awesome. Okay. So yeah. Tension and release. Functional harmony. Here we go. So what am I talking about when I say tension and release? I've defined it here in a few different ways. It can be a feeling of discomfort relative to something more comfortable. It can be a question and a subsequent answer. And in music especially, it serves the purpose of creating motion and making the piece sort of, quote unquote, go somewhere. So like if I just played the same chord over and over again, it could get pretty boring after a while. But let's say we start somewhere, maybe D minor, and then we go somewhere a little less comfortable. We build that tension, and then we release it. And we create this harmonic motion. The best analogy I can think of is that chords are like the parts of a sentence. So in the same way that a sentence needs a subject and a predicate to feel complete, harmony has this similar need for tension and a subsequent release. So first I'd like to discuss a really fundamental component of what's referred to as diatonic harmony, which is scale to chord relations. So here I've written out a C major scale, and if you're more comfortable reading off of the piano roll of a DAW, don't worry. I'll have a slide on that in just a bit here. And I'm also going to try to demonstrate what I'm doing as best as I can on my keyboard at the same time. But we got the C major scale in front of us, and each note of the scale has a certain directionality to it, so to speak. So C is a tonic. It's kind of our home base. It's the most restful note in the key. So C is like the period at the end of your musical sentence a lot of the time, but it can also be the beginning. And then as you go up the scale, you have D, which is equidistant from C and E. So it sort of feels like it could fall to either side, either leading to C or leading to E, which are both a little bit more restful than D. I'm also just going to move my computer so it's closer to the piano. That's C. We got D. We got E. And D is the same distance, it's a whole step from E. But then F is closer to E than it is to G. And this is a bit easier to visualize in piano roll, so you can see that F is a half step away from E, whereas it's 2 half steps or 1 whole step away from G. So F has this sort of, it leans more towards E. It wants to resolve down to E. And it can also go up to G, but it has a little bit more of a pull down to E because it's closer. Let's see. Where was I? Yeah, so anyway, that's That's F. Then we've got G, like I said, a little more restful. And then A, like D, is equidistant from its two neighbors. It's got G below it and B above it. And B, being closer to C than it is to A, wants to resolve up to C. And so that's why playing up the major scale and stopping at B is so dissatisfying, is because it feels like an unpunctuated sentence. So each of these notes has this sort of role, this polarity, this direction that it wants to go from a place of less resolved to more resolved, of more unstable to more stable. So these polarities are what makes certain chord motions so satisfying, because it's several scalar motions that are happening in tandem. For example, F major to C major, which I've drawn here. We have F, C, F, and A in this inversion. And it wants to move F, the note, wants to move down to its neighbor E. A wants to move down to its neighbor G, and C wants to stay where it is because it's tonic, it's the home base. So then together we have, and so we have this sort of sound of resolution, of direction, and of harmonic motion. This scale-based understanding of chord motion also gets us into smooth voice leading, where the goal is to minimize the distance that any one voicing, that is, any one note, moves in the chord. The voice leading here sounds much smoother than if I were to play it this way, or this way, because there's just these larger leaps across the keyboard to get from one chord to the other. But when arranged in the way that I've drawn here in piano roll, nothing has to move very far, and so you feel the smoothness of the harmonic motion. Does anybody have questions so far, by the way? I feel like I should have made that more clear at the start. If you have questions at any point during this presentation, please just stop me, yell at me. How are we feeling?
Pretty good. I mean, I am.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm good
so far.
too.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so, I mean, like, it would be pretty cumbersome to consider every single scale relation of every note in a chord every time you want to move to a new one. So instead, we just assign a chord to each note of the scale. So each of these chords fulfills a certain function in what is called the key center of C major. So even though the chords change, they all use the notes of the C major scale. C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, and D diminished all use the same C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And that's why they're all in the same key center. So then what we're going to get into with functional harmony is that each of these chords relative to one another has a function that it's been assigned that sort of describes how it relates to the other chords in its key center. Here's the same representation in piano roll form. These Roman numerals indicate which scale degree the chord is. So the C chord is 1, the G chord is 5, so forth. The capitalized ones are major chords and lowercase ones are minor. Oh, I just realized I have a typo. So this VII, the 7, should have a little O next to it to indicate that it's a diminished chord. So everybody know what a diminished chord is? Do I need to clarify?
I know what it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, like, basically what it is like, if you have a minor chord, like if you had D minor, that would be D, F, and A. And if you wanted to play D diminished, you would replace the A with an A flat. And so the distance between every note of the chord is a minor third or 3 half steps. And you can also throw B in there if you want, because again, 3 more half steps takes you from A flat to B, and 3 more half steps takes you from B back to D. So you can technically just do it all the way up the keyboard if you wanted to. This sounds very spooky, very seasonally appropriate. Okay. So, like I said, each of these chords has a function according to what's called functional harmony. It's just the name given to the school of thought on harmony. And the chords from this set have one of 3 roles, more or less. The naming conventions get a bit more complicated if you actually go on like the Wikipedia page to look this up, but I find this conception much easier to grasp and apply. So the tonic is the most stable chord quality. It feels like a resolution to the tension that comes before it. The dominant is the source of that tension, and the subdominant comes before the dominant. It precedes it and prepares the listener for the creation of tension. So if we apply that to the key center of C that we just described, the tonic chords are the major 1 and the minor 6. So in the key center of C, these would be C major and A minor respectively. So, C, E, G, A, C, E. So you should notice that these 2 chords share 2 of their 3 notes. They share C and E, which also happen to be 2 of the more stable, restful notes in the major scale, as we discussed earlier with our scale to chord relations. And that's also why moving from one of those chords to the other constitutes a sort of weaker harmonic motion, because it doesn't feel like as much of a shift, as much of a change, because there's so many similar notes. So then, the dominant chords are the major 5 and the diminished 7. I already described what diminished chord is. Again, these 2 chords share some notes. Okay, in the key center of C, it would be G major and B diminished. Again, you should note that these 2 are they're composed mostly of the less restful notes of the major scale, like B that pulls to C, and D that's between C and E and wants to go to one or the other of those 2. And F in the diminished really wants to pull down to E. So we have all these notes from our scale that we described as unstable that want to resolve to something more stable, which is where the dominant to tonic relationship really flows from. And again, the 2 chords share some notes, and that's why they're both in this dominant category. And the subdominant, that is the major 4 and the minor 2. In C, this is F major and D minor. Once again, we have shared chord tones, the F and the A, and these chords generally have a mix of more and less restful tones in them. There's C in F major, which is quite stable, but also an F, which will want to go somewhere. So for this reason, subdominant chords can be used as either a subdominant function that leads to tension, or you can skip the dominant step in that chord progression and go straight to the tonic. So, for example, you could play F, and then G, and then C for a perfect subdominant dominant to tonic cadence, which is just another word for chord progression. Or you could just play F to C. And that's where you get a lot of gospel passing tones and passing chords from, like what I just played. So then, excuse me, there's the minor 3, which I haven't put in any of the categories so far, because it shares 2 notes with C major. It shares the E and the G. But it also shares 2 notes with G major, the G and the B. So it has an equal number of notes from a tonic functioning chord and a dominant functioning chord in it. So for this reason, E minor can take on either a dominant or tonic role depending on its context. So if you just played a dominant chord, then E will sound like more of a tonic. But if you just played a subdominant, it'll act more like a dominant. And so it's a really cool chord because one common trope in music is to play a cadence ending on C or ending on the one chord. So like a D to G to C. And what I'm playing right now is just those same chords we've been talking about with extensions. Without those extensions, it would just sound like this. And to surprise the listener, to misdirect them, they will replace the C major with an E minor. And so it's a way that you can double the length of a chord progression and add interest by literally just playing the same thing twice, but replacing the C with an E in the first instance. So again, what I just played was D minor, G, minor, A minor, D minor again, G minor again, and the more predictable C major. Any other questions? How are we doing? Okay.
You're doing great.
Awesome. So yeah. It's also worth noting that sort of like I hinted at, I never directly explained the importance of the order of the subdominant, dominant to tonic, but that's the usual order if you want like a forward progress sounding harmonic motion. You don't necessarily have to follow that order though. Like you could do C to F. You can do like, this is sort of one school of thought on functional harmony, is that you kind of follow this very specific subdominant to dominant to tonic set of roles. But another school is to just take this chart that I have before you and just pick things from it and just move all around. And you can do some cool things that way too. It's really just a useful ground basis for your own exploration. And yeah, that's kind of the basics of functional harmony. More complicated applications involve the different minor scales. So we could take what we just did with C major, and we could apply it to one of the C minor chords, like C harmonic minor. You can make chords off of all of those. And you can relate them in a similar way to how we related all of the chords in the major function. You can extend the chord to scale relationships to incorporate chords with 4 different notes in them. And those chords start to sound pretty jazzy. So you've got, instead of C major, if you add the 7th note of the scale, you get a C major 7 chord. And then D minor 7, D minor 7, F major 7, G dominant, A minor 7, E half diminished, and back to C. And you get some nice jazzy sounds that way. And those extensions can go even further if you want, and get jazzier still. God, I've been talking a lot. You can also, okay, yeah. So that's diatonic harmony. That's what I got for you there. And then beyond functional harmony, these are a few things that, if you guys are interested, I could do lessons on in the future. Well, key shifts is a pretty basic thing. It's basically just like preparing a new tonic with a new dominant that shifts us from the key center that we're in now to a different one. So like, say we're playing around in the key center of C. And then we want to shift to like the key center of F. So then we might use C major as our new dominant to take us to F. And then go back. Go back and forth in that way. Modal harmony and modal interchange takes this scale to chord relationship we've been talking about and sort of takes it just to an extreme in a very cool and very often used in jazz way. And then there's also tritone substitution and other jazz substitutions that make for some very cool jarring sounds. So for example, if I play D minor to G to C, I can replace the G with a different dominant chord that is a distance of a tritone away for jazzy effect. And again, this is stuff that I would probably go into in more detail in an actual presentation. I'm just kind of giving you a sampler. And then there's non-functional harmony, which doesn't necessarily conform to the rules I've just laid out in functional harmony, but it still sounds really good and sort of is just found through exploration. And it can even be something as simple as just going from something messy sounding to something less messy sounding. And that's its own form of tension and release. And also, if you're interested in learning more about functional harmony, I have a resource that I will drop in the chat. I'll just copy and paste this. But yeah, that's what I got for you guys on functional harmony. Are there any questions so far?
Yeah, I sort of had a question about the whole key change thing. It's something
totally.
I've messed around a little bit, and it was never really clear to me, like I know how to do it in like a music theory legal way, but it was never clear to me what makes it sound good or what makes it sound like just kind of random.
Yeah.
Do you have any like insight into that?
Yeah, totally. So, yeah, it depends on like what key you're shifting to. So, one common shift in a lot of classical music is to be, messing around in C major. And then go to the relative minor, so like A minor. And getting there, you can throw in an E major chord that would act as the dominant to A minor in that case. So you're in C, and then you play E major, and that takes you down to A minor. For contrast, a thing that was common in a lot of disco music from the 70s and 80s is like at the height of the excitement of the song, they would take whatever they were doing and they would just do it a half step higher. And that just takes everything up a notch, pushes it to 11, and just makes it even more exciting than it was before. And so, yeah, there's definitely just like some exploration that you can do on your own time of like what sounds good. Like if I go down from C to like A flat, that has a certain effect. I'm trying to think what song does that. Oh God, Daniel Caesar. What's that fucking song? Dang, it's with her. It's like a good. It's like a song that he says. Get best part.
Yeah.
Best part.
Best part.
Yeah. In best part, he starts in D major, D major 7. Then he does an A minor 7. Then he does a G major 7. And then he goes to B flat major 7, which is crazy because he's leaving the key center of D major 7. And he's going a major third away from the key center that he was in to get there. And so it's that specific key shift conveys a specific effect. And a lot of jazz music is just the result of a lot, like just constant key shifts. Like Giant Steps is just like a key shift every second, every half second, basically. And you kind of just have to like mess around with different key shifts and listen to different songs to get a feel for what each of those shifts does. But yeah, some of the most common ones are shifting from like a major key center to a relative minor, shifting by intervals of major thirds, and shifting like up a half step or a whole step, or down a half step or a whole step.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, I think that answers my question for the most part. That half step trick is like pretty crazy and pretty much like every type of EDM, to be honest.
Yeah, it's so good.
Like I don't know why it's not used more. All right, see you, Reed.
See you, Reed. Thanks for coming. Yeah.
But yeah, thanks.
Yeah. If no one else has any questions, Jeremy submitted a piece of MIDI to me to discuss in the context of diatonic harmony, which I can kind of do. It was a really cool piece of MIDI. Thank you, Jeremy, for submitting it. I really enjoyed sitting down and analyzing it. It definitely, like, the analysis might go a little bit beyond the scope of this presentation, but I can go through it anyway. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop this share. I'm going to open up FL real quick, and I'm just going to put the MIDI in there so that we can all listen to it, and I can explain what's happening, like, chord by chord. But yeah, if anyone else has questions in the meantime while I'm setting that up, please shoot.
I got one.
Go for it.
So the exciting thing about playing in minor key is that there's multiple scales and therefore sometimes different chords. How do you do progressions thinking in minor key, basically?
Usually I will pick a minor. Like, if I honestly use just like the natural minor a lot because it has a relative major, and so it's just swap between like, you know, an A minor center and like C major. But yeah, like I said, you can apply this sort of idea of functional harmony to the other key centers. So let's say we're working with melodic minor. So it's got like, it's like the major scale, but with one minor or one like flat third. And you build chords off of all of those. You got C minor, E flat augmented, F major, G major, A diminished, B diminished, and C. So you can take these same sort of motions that we were talking about before of like 2-5-1 and 4-5-1 and apply them here. So let's say I want to do a 2-5-1 in melodic minor. So I would find 2, that's D. I would take the other notes of the C minor scale that go with D in thirds. We got F and A, that's D minor. And then I want G for our 5. That's going to be G major. And then I want to do E minor, obviously. So going through it methodically is like how I usually do it at first. I also have a lot of background in see you, CJ. I also have a lot of background in jazz harmonies, so I conceptualize a lot of things through that lens and through just like specific chord voicings that I've learned. So like for example, see you, Ryan. There's like the minor 2-5-1. So for that one, I believe it's based on the harmonic minor scale. So like if I was doing that in C, it would be a D half chord, and then what's called a G alt chord, which means that it's G dominant. It has G, B, and F in it, but then instead of E, you have E flat. Instead of A, you have A flat, and then you also can add a B flat on top of that. And very complex and crunchy voicing, but it ends up giving you some notes that are shared with the resolving C minor. You've got that E flat and B flat that are also in the C minor. So it sounds like this. And so just because of my like jazz and piano background, I usually build a lot of chord voicings just based off of jazz voicings that I know. But there are like other ways to approach it as well.
Very cool, thanks.
Yeah. Alright, so I'm going to share again. This time it should be safe to share FL. And I'm just going to throw Surge on here so that we have, or actually I'll throw the Labs soft piano here. Can you guys hear this?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a little bit. Oh wait, never mind. I was gonna say
Labs
it's quiet, but that's
really
because
quiet.
the
that better?
volume thing on the live streaming was quiet. So
Gotcha. So, all right. Jeremy, you gave me some dummy thick chords. I'm a big fan of it, though. It's really good. So I'm just going to play it through once, and then we can talk about it. Yeah, that's a sick chord. So, going chord by chord, we have. I'm just going to do the most simplified versions of what these chords are. So we have an A minor, and then we have a different A minor. They just have an E and an F sharp in the bass note, but both of them are A minor, really A minor 7. See you, Gavin. Then we've got, after the two A minors, we have this, I guess I should probably write that as a G major 9. I had it written as B minor 7 over G before, but that's the same thing. And then we've got this E sus chord. Sounds really cool. And up until this point, every chord that we have used is in the same key center. All of these notes can be conceptualized in the key center of G because they all use the notes of scale. So like if I play these together. You can hear the moment when that starts to sound bad with chord 5. Because we've changed key centers and I kept playing G, but that's for the key center. And we can tell because this is an A major chord with a G sharp in it. So it's got C sharp and G sharp, which are not notes in the key center of G. So that means that we have this sort of, specifically, because we're moving from the key center of G to the key center of A, which is a whole step up. Like, listen. It has sort of this quality of like lifting. And that quality of lifting is independent of the direction that the chord is moving. So even if I'm moving up, like you feel that lifting. But even if I start moving the notes of the chord down the keyboard instead of up, it still sort of has that lifting quality. I keep the top note the same in both. You still feel like you're going up, partially because of the bass. Say I played a different note in the key of G. It still feels like this sort of like more positive feeling to go up. Next we have another sudden key shift. So we have 3 key centers in these 3 chords. So we go again from that major lift to back to a minor A or like a G major potentially key center. So we kind of feel that feeling of going up now becomes a feeling of going down. So we go from here, we go up, and then we go back down. Oops. And then we have next. My notes are cut off. We got the A major 9. We just played the A minor 9, and next is this lovely. That is a nice chord. That is B dominant with a flat 9, and it sounds very jazzy. And so that chord prepares the ear for, in the bass, that same like 5-to-1 motion is a nice resolution, and it prepares the listener for a return to key center of G. So those shifts in key center are what make this sound really cool, in my opinion. And the reason that it's so effective, in spite all of those shifts in key center, is because of the smooth voice leading. So very nice job on that, Jeremy. And yeah, I'm sure you did not submit this for critiquing, so I'm not going to tell you to change anything, but this is very, very nice chord progression.
I think I just made it like in high school, just like doing like, I like, because the chromatic, when there's the 3 those key or what's it called, key changes, or the key centers changing, you see just like the chromatic stuff. I think I was messing around with that idea on the guitar or my piano, but I didn't know what I was doing. It's just like, that sounds really jazzy. So. Yeah,
it does sound really jazzy. Nice job. So yeah, that's what I got for y'all tonight. Hope you enjoyed.
Thank you, Matt. All right, everyone. Round of applause.
This was hella dope.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it.
Yeah, sweet. So that like concludes the main part of our meeting. If you have somewhere to be, you're free to leave. I mean, you're always free to leave. You're not helpful. But yeah, so we're just gonna hang out. Maybe if we have enough people, play some games. Yeah. Shoot, is there anything else I need to announce? I don't think so. I realize I should probably tell you guys that we have a Facebook group chat as well. I think I may have not shared that earlier, but yeah, just message me if you're not a part of that and would like to join. It's not super active anymore, but it's a great place to receive feedback if It's hard to receive feedback here. There's some people who are active on that chat who aren't active here. So, yeah. What else? Oh yeah, we also have our music production like 101 guide ready. I mean, it's been ready for a while. I just forgot about it. But yeah, I can post that after the meeting today. It's just some links to useful like YouTube channels or guides, and I basically just asked a few people who just a few people who learned through like online resources mostly what helped them the most, and threw them in there. Some links to some free plugins as well that are really useful. So yeah, I'll have that up soon. And yeah, Matt just posted the PowerPoint, so if you forget anything, go check that out, or you can probably ask him directly, I'm sure. Right?